Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Elizabeth Yoder with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. I will be the moderator and technical support for today. Today's topic is navigating difficult conversations in workforce settings, building confidence and connection. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded. The presentation recording and any materials presented during today's meeting will be available on the Illinois Workforce Academy website within 48 hours of today's session. I will put that link in the chat here momentarily. We do have two polls real quick to go through. If you will give me 1 second here to pull those up. We'll just take about 30 seconds for each one. You can take a moment to fill that out. That would be great. All right, a lot of Title I today. That's great.
I forwarded that to Val again.
If you haven't done so already, if you could please mute yourself. You have the ability to mute and unmute in today's webinar, but while the presenters are speaking, we would like for you to be on mute, please. Okay. So here is your second poll.
All right, see you later.
Nice, a good balance between the Chicago area and Southern Illinois today. That's great to see. Awesome. All right, so we will turn this over to our presenter if you guys want to get started. And just as a reminder, if you could please mute yourself if you haven't done so already.
Hi, everyone. It is excellent to see you all here today, carving out some time for a very important conversation. I know you just did that poll, but we are so curious and also in the spirit of community in this topic. If you wouldn't mind sharing, your name, your organization, your title, your location, and if you'd like, one reason why you're coming to this workshop, to this webinar today. What's driving you here? Is there a conversation brewing? Is it a skill you've been trying to build? It would be great to just see in the chat who's in the room and where you are. So thank you so much. All right. Thank you for sharing. Seeing some skill development. Yes, and hopefully you are seeing the right slides now. Perfect. So we want to tell you who we are. So Yolaine, kick us off.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yolaine Jean. I'm a Title II consultant. I support adult education and workforce training. In my previous lives, or currently, I've been an adult education instructor. I've done some project management. I've done workforce education coordination, and some leadership development. I look forward to working with you all in this space. I I specialize in group facilitation and focused conversations, strategic planning, and communities of practice, and really helping build out our Bridge and our ICAPS programs across the city. Megan, you're on mute.
Thank you. It's always good to come off mute for that. So I am Megan Wells, and similar to Yolaine, and we've had the chance to work together for some years. You can see a throwback pic here on the slide. Also a consultant, most of my professional career in adult education, workforce, family literacy. I've played many roles in adult education instructor, a bridge instructor, a program manager, volunteer literacy coordinator. And my focus is participatory facilitation, consensus, action planning, strategic planning, and learning design. So a lot of the skill that we are going to talk about today comes up in organizations across sectors, and even in relationships and families. So we know it's one of those leadership skills that comes up again and again. And so we're happy to kind of bring this to you today.
So, in today's workshop, we'll be working on building some skills. We'll be focusing on 3 strategies to really help you navigate those difficult conversations in workforce setting. So, creating community agreements, recognizing awareness, and using a focused conversation framework to help us prepare for that conversation and kind of walk into that difficult conversation with our best foot forward. This is really about how do we prepare ourselves? How do we prepare the person who we're having that conversation with, and really promoting that community and that connection as we move forward in this space. It's not easy for everyone, but we can do our best to make sure we're ready, we're prepared, and we can be supportive when we're having these discussions.
And our goals, we are actually going to start by modeling part of one of the strategies that we are going to talk about today, which is really preparing and setting the groundwork or the soil for any conversation. And it's to talk about what our expectations are. And in the training program that Yolene and I have been trained in, those are called rational aims and experiential aims. Rational aims are really, we'll be talking about that in a moment, but our rational aim for today will be to understand and reflect on a few of these strategies to navigate difficult conversations. So that's the what, that's the content we hope you take out of this. But we also want you to have an experience. We want you to leave feeling a certain way, and that's that experiential aim. And so our experiential aim is for you to hopefully leave today with a little bit more confidence and empowerment to face a difficult conversation with poise, but also with a little preparation. We know sometimes conversations come at us on the fly, but with practice and with preparation, we can kind of stand our ground and know where we stand in the situation. So that takes us to our very first strategy. I should say, Yolene and I know that you have precious, precious time to spend. So if there is a concept that needs a little bit more explanation, we are very interactive. So please use the chat, unmute yourself. We'd love to hear some voices in the room. So that's all to say, if something is not landing with you or seems a little bit jargony or off-putting, please let us know so we can have some clarifying conversation. So again, back to our very first strategy. How many of you, and we can use emojis or hand raising, have been in a space where you have been a part of developing group agreements or community agreements? Okay, I see some hands on the cameras and I see a few, okay, thumbs, very good. Excellent. So if this is a new concept to you, a community agreement is essentially creating an intentional meeting space by setting up norms together. And it's really asking, what do we need to actively participate? What do we need so that all participants feel like that this is a space that they're open to dialogue in? What we are noticing in leadership training is that it's not just this top-down approach that's going to work anymore, right? We need participation, we need conversations, and we need dialogue to really move things forward and move through discussions. So we're going to look at a few examples. So what do effective community agreements really do? They help prime the foundation for some meaningful dialogue. They help build trust and open up the floor to participation beyond just the, quote unquote, leadership. It also offers some equitable engagement. If we're all holding ourselves accountable to these agreements, these norms, then we're all leaders at that moment. We're all kind of figuring out how to move in this space. And if we haven't already, Yolaine or Elizabeth, could we please share the fillable PDF? Yolaine and I put all of this wisdom down in a, what is it, Yolaine, 14-page digital workbook. So feel free to use it. Feel free to take notes in it. It is fillable. It is something you can print out and look at later. But if you did want to take notes while we chat about some of these strategies, those PDFs are available. That PDF is available to you, and we are on page 1, agreements. I wanted to give you a few sample community agreements, some tried and true, and see if you've heard of any of these. Some of the agreements that in groups that I've facilitated or been a part of that have been very successful are the agreement for all of us to say, we're going to make I statements. We're not just going to, point a finger over here or talk about something more generally. We're going to say, like, for me, this is feeling like this, or this is how this is landing for me, right? Really taking ownership of and so if you have to take ownership of what you're saying, you also are accountable to that, right? There's also this concept of make space and take space. If you haven't heard of this one before, you might be able to figure it out from the words, but if you're normally a person who is the first to raise their hand, they're first to comment when asked a question, notice that about yourself and your own extroversion or confidence, and maybe take a step back, right? Take a moment to say, like, ooh, I'm gonna wait till 3 more people say something before I say something again. Like, just be aware of the space you're taking up. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, maybe you're someone who likes to sit in the background and actively listen, but not necessarily give your 2 cents. This is an invitation to get out of your comfort zone and participate. Your voice, even if it's shaky or unsure, is welcome. So make space, take space is something that really helps people feel like they're invited in. Intent versus impact. This is a big one, right? What's the intent of what you're saying? Oh, I didn't mean it that way versus the impact. Here's how it landed with me, and here's how that made me feel, right? So being aware that there's going to be some moments where we say things that don't land a certain way. I've seen some organizations do the oops, ouch feedback system where oops, that doesn't sit right with me, the way that name that you use for that group of people, right? So having different ways to talk about that ahead of time. So when something comes up, hey, we have a language and a dialogue around this. Um, we talked about active listening. Again, as a lifelong learner, I love We Are All Learners. It really, again, invites people to be curious, to ask questions. You don't have to know all the answers or know the right answers or the right way to do something. There's often no right answers in difficult conversations. There's just different perspectives. And you will often be in a space where folks are not feeling safe to talk, and they might want to know, hey, is this a safe space to share? And I know that it's just going to stay in this room. If that's this type of space, you might want to have an agreement around confidentiality, right? And this could even happen in your one-on-ones, not just in group settings. We have accommodate access needs, right? If people need things in different ways, different formats, need agendas ahead of time, try to figure out what those needs are and address those. And I love this one, take care of yourself. Everybody knows what they individually need. So really inviting them, you need to take breaks. You know that about yourself, take care of yourself. Any other agreements? You can see I have a snapshot of a butcher paper that I took with a group that I facilitated with. These were the agreements that they came up with as a group. You could read those. You might guess they were gardeners. There's a lot of metaphors there. But anyone else want to share in the chat or even unmute for an agreement or a group norm that you've heard before or that you might want if you were wanting to feel comfortable showing up to a conversation? Go ahead and share in the chat or unmute. Ooh, thank you, Rachel. Intent versus impact is huge. It's a big one. We got to talk about it.
Yeah, I really liked that comment because I think of it not only when we're talking about working with our colleagues or working with groups, but intent versus impact and working with our clients and our customers. We don't know oftentimes where someone is coming from, and so we don't know what interpretations they're making. So it's really important to ground the conversation before you even start to ensure that you guys are both coming into that same space. You're both coming into it without preconceived notions and just really here to have a discussion and really support them however that need is. Yeah, Trevor, that's a
Love it,
great point
Trevor.
as well.
Bringing the benefit of good intentions to the table, right? Good intent, good, positive. Lacey asks, curious, if you're not the leader of the group, how can you ask for some of these suggestions? That's a great question. And this is often the question for some of the strategies where, hey, what if I'm not the one facilitating the conversation? What if I'm not? I think, bringing these tools to the folks in the room that are creating these spaces. Often those folks are alone in isolation and planning things without, group dynamics in mind. Hearing a little feedback from you, I think would be very helpful. What do you think, Yolene? And we'll
I
open the
agree.
floor.
This is one of those spaces where you're managing up. You're saying this is important to bring into this space. I not only require this, but within this group, I think this would help all voices be heard. And so I think it's important to introduce the topic. Maybe it becomes a community norm. And I think that's going to strengthen the community within your workplace and just the community in general. I think it's important to just ask, be bold. You're stepping into this space as a participant.
I love that, mentioning managing up. Absolutely. Because as we know, these are all leadership skills, and you can be a leader at every level. I was also going to mention, having these conversations and eliciting and agreeing on these community agreements for your groups, it is an investment. It takes a little time. But as Yolene says, you use them again and again with that same group. So it's like you don't have to reestablish. So also to Lacey's point, I don't know if this is also underlying. We got the question in this in a similar workshop that we gave to professionals, can I do something like this when we've already been meeting without these for a really long time? And the answer is yes. It's never too late to say, hey, we're going to take a pause and put a pin on our conversation. And today we're going to talk about what we really need to have the most fruitful, productive conversation. And taking that extra 15, 20 minutes just to check in and then rechecking in every meeting. You have that slide with your agreements on it. It's already baked into your process, to your agenda. It's a short investment for a long-term benefit. And I wanted to show you an example of how I codified this or really put this in when I was a bridge teacher, an early childhood education bridge teacher. I did this with my students. We had a conversation. Then I ended up organizing their thoughts and I put it right in the syllabus. So you could put this in some client documentation, right? After you are coming to these agreements. And it's really cool to see participants see their own words in like an official document. So I can't tell you how thrilled my students were to say like, wow, I came up with that. Like that's what I need to learn and show up in this space. And now it's in our official syllabus. So just different ways you can make the most of your community agreements. It doesn't just have to be a one-time conversation. In fact, we hope it's, resonates throughout your time with that particular group.
And I would just like to add that community is a co-created space. And so we should feel like we are co-creators in a space that's safe for all of us. A reminder that for Megan, she was working with an international group of students. And so they may be coming from different backgrounds, different traditions, and different ways of understanding one another. So creating that space so that everyone felt like they had a voice and everyone felt like they co-created that space, they co-created the environment that's most conducive for their learning, gave them ownership of being those active listeners and participants in that space, and ensuring that whoever else comes into the space is well aware of kind of what the expectations are.
Thanks, Yolene. And now's a chance for either questions about this particular strategy of community agreements or group norms in your spaces, or if you'd like to share with us an agreement that you heard about today or have been thinking about that you might suggest for your next team conversation. Please share. We'd love to hear um, which ones we heard. We heard some plus ones to the intent versus impact.
I will add, since we're okay, make space and take space. I really
Yeah.
like bringing the benefits of good intentions to the table. I think a lot of people are struggling or have had negative experiences with systems in the past, and so making sure it's been said explicitly offers people a little bit of breathing room.
Absolutely, because these are some of the meta level things we don't really talk about, like our personalities or our comfort level. These are things that are really hard to bring up just when we want to ask a question. So talking about it as a group and recognizing that people are coming with different ways of, comfort levels, I think is a great way to show that you great. Another vote for make space, take space. Yeah. And you can change, the other words I've heard for that is step up, step back, make space, take space, I think was a little bit better language. Listening actively without interrupting. So helping people even know what the expectation is. Hey, active listening is not interrupting. Very good. Very explicit. Take care of yourself. We've got to do it. Use empathetic language, right? And maybe even I would love to hear the conversation that a team might have around, what does that mean? What does that look like? What does that sound like? Thank you so much for sharing. I'm
I
going to
think
pass it. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Yolene.
you pass.
I'm going to pass you the ball for our next strategy. And again, continue to think about things and ask questions in the chat.
Thank you for that. I jumped the gun there. But to Megan's earlier point, a lot of this is about building self-awareness. And to a previous point, empathy is what we're really trying to build into this space. We're working with different clients from different situations, from different experiences, and we want to let them know that they are welcome here and this is their space. So, before we start talking about self-awareness, I think it's important to think about self-reflection on part of this practice. In the chat, I want you to answer or respond to the following question. What is going through your mind when you are called into a difficult conversation? Or how do you experience the anticipation for a difficult conversation? I see fear. Well, I'm going to be misinterpreted, anger, anxiety, self-preservation. Yeah, a lot of anxiety, a lot of self-preservation, a lot of negative self-talk. Yes, trying to kind of take care of yourself and not escalate. Yes, your voice goes nowhere. How can I make my points clear to not add more barriers to the conversation? Oh my gosh. Okay, so all, this is why we came here. I see this. I love this chat because a, a challenging conversation or a difficult conversation is not a new experience for anyone. Unfortunately, we have them throughout our lives. As we move into leadership, as we move into places where people look at us and we're meant to model behavior, now, now it's time to think about how we show up in this space. as we're trying to put forth our best effort to navigate difficult conversations, we also want to keep in mind that the person we're having the challenging conversation with is probably going to have the similar emotions and experiences that we have when we're called into a space. Yes, this is not one-sided at all, right? We're talking about a conversation. The whole goal of this presentation is about how do we work interdependently? How do we work with one another? And so while we're talking about it from one point of view, it's important to use the skills that we're bringing to awareness to help both sides navigate this well. And so in your responses, because they're still coming in, and I appreciate it because, again, this is what happens on both sides. Um, it's offering that it's offering that window into the inner workings of our minds and our somatic systems when we're preparing for difficult conversations. So in this portion of the presentation, we're really going to talk about that point of self-awareness, and we're going to think about how we can show up to be as strong and as empathetic and aware as possible to ensure the conversation goes as we're going. Someone previously discussed planning. Sorry, let me go back into the chat. Stephanie Robinson says, how can I make my points clear to not add more barriers to conversation and to stay, and Norma said, stay calm and not lose it. That's what we're here for. We're here to establish a practice. We're here to establish preparation so that when we're moving into these spaces, we come in calm, collected, and supportive of the discussion. So, self-awareness allows us to kind of recognize our emotions, our triggers, our communication styles during difficult conversations. When we're aware of those internal factors, we're better equipped to manage them and to stay calm and composed, which is the key to a productive dialogue. Here's why it matters. It matters in terms of our emotional intelligence. We're all experiencing emotions in difficult conversations. Self-awareness allows us to recognize when we're becoming frustrated, defensive, when we're utilizing self-preservation, or when we're anxious. With this knowledge, we can adjust our responses before we say or do anything we may regret. It helps us understand our triggers. We each have specific triggers, things that make us react strongly. And self-awareness helps us identify those things so that when these conversations do arise, we can pause, reflect, and choose how we respond rather than reacting impulsively. Trevor, I think that's a really great comment that you're making. Sometimes we don't understand our triggers, and sometimes we don't recognize our triggers. There are different therapeutic practices. One of them is cognitive behavioral therapy that can help you kind of navigate through your experiences to help you kind of anticipate an experience that might cause a trigger. And so if you have access to healthcare that allows you access to therapeutic support, that might be a place to explore to better help you better understand yourself. Again, self-awareness, better put yourself in better spaces when situations may be triggering. Understanding ourselves also helps with our communication. When we know how we communicate, whether we're calm, assertive, or passive, we can adjust our approach to ensure that we are both heard and receptive to others. That good point of that active listening means waiting until the other person has fully communicated. I think that's really important. I know in our current environments, technology has made our attention spans a little bit shorter. And so I've noticed in a lot of communications, we talk over each other just a little bit more than we may have previously. And so when we are self-aware of the situation that we're in and who we're having that discussion with, it's important for us to also keep in mind Yeah, like let that person take their time. Someone else said, they don't want to lose it. They want to communicate clearly. Giving them that opportunity to do so will really keep the temperature in the room on a lower level because people feel heard, they feel respected, they feel understood, and they feel like their time is being appreciated. Um, it provides clarity and promotes that mutual respect that we all need and understanding so that when we're in this critical space of resolving a conflict, we're also promoting communication. And then last but not least, that most important part that is sometimes quite elusive depending on your cultural background, depending on your kind of mode of how you move forward, how you protect yourself against situations that are difficult. It helps us to build empathy. Empathy is kind of the hardest one to read, but when we're aware of our own emotional state, we can be more attuned to the emotions and the needs of others. When we attend to ourselves, we can better attend to others. Again, we have heard this since COVID and we'll continue to hear it. When you put on your own mask, when you're aware of how you're operating and entering into that space, you've given yourself some breathing room, you can now offer it to others. So empathy fosters that stronger connection and it helps us to communicate in ways that don't alienate or blame others. A way to build that self-awareness ahead of a difficult conversation is by establishing a grounding practice. This will help us to become more self-aware of our emotional state, which will help us negotiate how we show up when accomplishing something difficult. Grounding practice or a somatic activity helps us connect with our bodies and ground ourselves. This is something we can use anytime, so not just in anticipation for a difficult conversation, but when anxiety does arrive, this will help us regulate our emotions before or during difficult conversations. So this is an opportunity for you to take a minute or two to really zone out, y'all. We're going to do a somatic activity. So I'm going to lead you through just a grounding activity. I'm going to ask that you just, put your hand away from your mouse, step away from your keyboard, and it's just a few minutes to ground ourselves and remind ourselves where we are, what we're doing in this space, and how we can be more self-aware. I'm going to use my like yoga teacher voice, so hopefully that soothes you into this space. If you'd like to close your camera, as Megan says, please do so, and I will walk you through this practice. Find a comfortable position in your seat, and let's begin by taking a few deep breaths. Inhale slowly through your nose and exhale through your mouth, allowing your body to relax with each breath. Take another deep breath in. And as you exhale, consciously release any tension you may be holding in your shoulders or neck. Now, place both feet flat on the ground. Feel the connection between your feet and the floor, grounding you. Imagine you're rooted to the earth like a tree, with your feet as your base. Take a moment to feel this grounding sensation. As you sit in this grounded position, bring awareness to how your body feels. Are you tense anywhere? Do you feel any tightness or discomfort? Check in with your chest, your stomach, and your shoulders. Notice any areas of tension. Now, gently shift your attention to your breath again. Notice how it feels as you breathe in and out. Allow your breath to become slow and deep. If your mind begins to wander, gently bring your focus back to your breath, returning to that grounding feeling. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll do this one more time. Breathe in on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And breathe out on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now think about your last difficult conversation you had or one that is upcoming. Allow yourself to connect with how you felt during that conversation. Did your body tense up? Were you aware of feeling nervous or anxious? Simply observe these sensations without judgment. We're not trying to change anything. Just notice what's happening in your body. Okay. I want you to take your last deep breath. I want you to inhale through your nose, hold it for a moment, and exhale through your mouth. When you're ready, slowly bring your awareness back to the room. If you're on camera, please turn your camera on and join us when you're ready. Now that we've grounded ourselves, notice how you feel. Do you feel a bit more calm, centered, more aware of your body? This simple practice can be something to use whenever you're preparing for or in the middle of a difficult conversation. It helps you stay aware of your emotions, regulate your responses, and open up space for more effective communication. Moving forward, as we explore strategies to navigate difficult conversations, remember that self-awareness and grounding techniques like this can enhance your ability to stay focused, composed, and empathetic. Even when tensions are high, let's continue to keep this mindful awareness in our conversations as we move through our next few strategies. Megan.
Thank you, Yolene. I hope everyone feels their shoulders a little bit a little bit lighter, and it gives you a chance to really think about the mind-body connection that comes when we are faced with difficult conversations. We really do hold things, and if you ask people, it's different places, right? Is it your stomach that tightens up? Is it your shoulders that go higher, right? So knowing what how your body holds some of that tension, and finding those practices that help you um, become more aware, but also more grounded and calm. I love that a lot of what Yolene walked us through was breath work, and really letting the breath go all the way through. Often you'll notice when you're nervous, you're not breathing, right? You're kind of holding the breath a little bit. So having a practice that allows you to, yeah, become aware of all of this is a great strategy. And it might not be one that you thought would come up today, in a WIOA space, but hey, this is something that everybody deserves, and it could be something that you incorporate into, just beyond your self practice and into some group practice. So, our third strategy is coming up. We talked about at the beginning of the session that we have some aims, we have some expectations for today. And that's really what a difficult conversation starts with. Now, we know not all difficult conversations can be planned ahead of time. However, often folks are very aware that a difficult conversation is simmering. It's simmering around, right? People are starting to talk. You're hearing word of something, an email came through. Everybody's thinking and talking about it, but not saying anything. So, this next strategy is for how to be planful when you start to anticipate that a difficult conversation might be coming up. Okay. So, your very first step is to either think for yourself or get in conversation with the person who might be invoking this space, whether it's a leader, a supervisor, someone that you're working with, and establish shared expectations. What are we really hoping to do? with this conversation? What are our aims here? Both, rationally and, what do we hope to come out of this? And then also, how do we want people to leave feeling? Okay. And if you would like to follow along in your fillable workbook, we are now on page 2, and we will be talking about preparing a focused conversation. This is a method that Yolaine and I have been trained on, based in the Technology of Participation, or TOP methods, through the Institute of Cultural Affairs. It has a funny acronym. It is ORID, ORID. And for some folks, this is not very meaningful. So some great adult ed folks have come up with FRED, facts, react, explore meaning, and deciding, something similar. But because I was trained on ORID, I will often mix and match the idea of a focused conversation and the ORID method, or the ORID framework for planning a conversation. So we're going to go through each one of these steps together, and you can follow along on the fillable worksheet, taking notes. I found when I first encountered this conversation model, it was almost magical. I felt like I had a cheat sheet all of the sudden. When I would design an ORID-based conversation, I would start to kind of get more positive results because of, the fact that we were essentially building in some speed bumps to what a normal conversation might be. Many of us jump right from the objective, or like what is going on, straight to the action planning or the decision making. And what we do when we do that is we're basically skipping the opportunity for folks to process the information, to interpret the information, and perspectives are widely scattered. You're not kind of all on the same page. So we're going to go take a deep dive on these different components. But in your worksheet, you'll also see that part of planning a focused conversation is also having the rational aim, right? What's the intent of this conversation? What's the experiential aim? What's the emotional impact or inner impact I want this conversation to have? And then it's always helpful to have a hook or an opening. Why are we even talking about this? Oh, we're talking about this because of the email we all got, right? What's that tangible hook that you can, a story, a shared experience that you can bring everyone together around? So let's break this down into the different steps, starting with O, objective. Okay. For the objective part of a conversation, this is where we're making sure everybody saw and heard the same thing. Again, sometimes we skip this and we think everybody thinks the same thing that I did. But just by asking a few questions like, what do we actually know about problem X? Like, what do we know about this? Or what words stood out for you in this email that we just got? What are you reading? What's in black and white? Taking a moment to just share what everyone's seeing, hearing, what their senses are taking in is quite surprising. You might find that folks are seeing something in the room that others didn't, and they're then learning, kind of coming up to speed with what's really the issue here. So taking a moment, seeing if everyone is seeing things and hearing things in the same way is an important first step to the ORID focused conversation method. Next is reflective. And as a conversation designer, you are thinking about questions that you might ask that help draw personal reactions, internal responses. We're talking about feelings, memories, associations. This is what the brain does naturally, but we often bypass it because it seems too mushy. But in fact, it's what people in the group are doing already. So you might as well kind of sit into it and get into it, and allow a few voices to share, like, hey, this is really reminding me of something else I experienced, and this is how that went down, right? Giving them a chance to share, what does this remind you of? Or where are you clear in what we just discussed? And where are you still confused? Giving folks a real opportunity to do some personal reflection before getting into decision making. And the I in the ORID method, interpretive. This is where you are asking questions that are drawing out the meaning, drawing out the values or significance of this topic. What are the implications of talking about this or moving in this certain direction? What options are open to us, right? To resolve problem X. What difference will it make if we do anything? This is where you're starting to discuss as a group. And if you are a values-based organization, what values are we holding up? Is this in line with our, mission and vision? Let's map that out. And finally, after going through the O, the R, and the I, do we get to a more decisional space in your focus conversation? These are questions like, well, what should we do about problem X? Or what's one change each of us can make as a result of this conversation? Or what impact has this conversation had on your understanding? And what are we committing to, right? Everybody wants to know, like, what did we just say? Or what are we deciding here? This is the time towards the end where you're getting into the decisional. So again, just to look at the full overview of a focused conversation, you start with a purpose, an aim, you have an opening, and you ask a series of questions in the objective, the reflective, the interpretive, and the decisional before closing the space. You'll notice in the workbook, we also have a space for you to jot some ideas for closings. Some of our conversations are not clean closes, right? They don't close as neatly with a bow, but just saying something like, we've really started a great conversation here that hasn't ended. Maybe one of our next steps is to schedule another conversation or schedule a follow-up or have a group look into this a little bit more deeply, right? So just acknowledging and thanking people for being a part of a conversation goes a long way to how people want to participate in the future. Okay. So in this strategy, we are really hoping that it helps you kind of enable group processes to go a little bit more smoothly, more participatory. It is very versatile. As I said, I have used the ORID method in a variety of workplace settings, home settings, relationship settings, and it really helps you slow down, especially in this reflective and interpretive. Put some speed bumps in your conversations and make sure everyone is kind of coming out of that meeting with the same understanding or at least a shared perspective, even if it's differing perspectives. And it also allows for more honesty. And in fact, you might find that folks that normally don't participate when asked more interpretive or reflective questions, that's when our introverts are like, I'm really in tune with what I'm feeling here. And now that I'm invited in to tell you what my inner voice is telling you, I'm going to share that. So it's really kind of opening the floor up to some more concepts and some more ways of being. So we are hoping that this very brief overview entices you enough to put it into practice. Yolaine is going to walk us through how we might be able to practice the focus conversation ORID method by doing some scenarios.
Thank you for that, Megan. That was a great foundation for the work we are about to do. Um, so we're about to put those three strategies into practice. We'll choose a scenario, we'll consider our role, and we'll make a plan for how we can use creating community agreements, recognizing awareness, and using a focused conversation framework to prepare that conversation. Our goal is to practice these practical strategies to help us communicate constructively, listen actively, and drive positive outcomes. We'll use this structured approach to reflect, to analyze, and apply these strategies so we can approach them with greater confidence in real world situations. So you were sent via email our packet. You also received it in the chat. I'm going to ask if you're able to open up the packet to pages 3 and 4. There are 5 scenarios on the page. Just choose a scenario. Um, don't worry about reading through them all. This workbook is yours. You can choose a different scenario with a member of your team and practice it using additional workbook pages. But once you have determined your scenario, I want you to consider your role within the scenario and using the key fact points. I want you to craft an ORID as that framework. Your ORID is on page 2. Um, if you need some support, if you need some reflection, pages 5 and 6 can offer you some additional questions to help you nurture that space. But choose one of these, spend some time thinking of looking at the scenario, again, considering your place within that scenario, and how would you approach this using the ORID framework. We'll give you about 5 minutes to practice this on your own, and then we'll come back with some reflection about how you think it went and what challenges or what supports you need in this space. As we wait, I'm going to throw on just a little bit of calming music, if that's okay. We have about 3 more minutes left.
Tu atención, por favor. Cubana de Aviación les anuncia la salida de su vuelo 406 destino a La Habana. Les deseamos una feliz estancia en esta ciudad. Gracias. Pronto está poblado, un auto de Chloe para que como yo está apurado. Y no sentido el calor de tu piel, besar está tu cuerpo otra vez. Todo mi cuerpo reclama tu cuerpo, como reclama el calor y la lluvia del verano. Majestad, por esto ya en mis manos. Vuestro que ansioso de esperar por la partida. Los deseos que por un altavoz que no se caída en mi corazón. Un calzón me paro, me pongo en sección, y justo por fin, el la luz espera. Bueno, 4, 5, 6,
One more minute.
4, 5, 6, cubana. 4, 5, 6, cubana. 4, 5, 6, cubana. 4, 5, 6, cubana.
When you're ready, please join us back in this space. Do we need another minute? I see some people still working in their workbooks. All right. I hope you enjoyed the beats. I hope they were not distracting. I'd love to hear from you about this experience. Please feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself to reflect on this activity. Please let us know which scenario you chose, and what questions could you ask to lead this conversation with compassion and promoting connection. Okay. Please do. So Melissa chose scenario number 2.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, I
We
think
can
so.
hear you.
Okay, excellent. All right, so hopefully you can give me some pointers if I miss anything. Okay, so what I thought here is sometimes we have meetings and we have an individual that just takes like all the oxygen from the group and then doesn't let others participate or and I know it's not their intent, but I went back to your community agreements. So you said to make I statements to kind of talk about intent versus the impact of it, because I'm sure the intent wasn't to take all the oxygen, but that's kind of how it resulted. So I would just say like I really appreciate that you are um like you volunteer information, you give suggestions, and I think that we should also give other team members an opportunity to give feedback. So in future meetings, like since I know that you usually have, some good suggestions or some good, information, like hold off until maybe one or two people have made suggestions as well, so we can encourage others to kind of step up. They might be shy and not feel confident enough in order to share. So I would go over community agreements like, hey, moving forward, like this is what we can do in our meetings. And then I would listen to their feedback because they might also impart some information that I don't know, like maybe some team members have reached out to this person like, hey, we know that you feel comfortable talking in front of groups. So, can you bring these things up? So I might learn something new. Um, so depending on what, their feedback would be, I would take that. Um, for me, I think it's really hard. Sometimes I feel like I have too much empathy, so I need to kind of be more self-aware again, as you said that, okay, how am I imparting the information? And am I being non-judgmental? Am I using language that the other person will understand in case it's a diversity issue. And sometimes it's just as adult learners, we have different ways of learning. So I would take all that into account. Oh gosh.
I think that's a great approach. I do want to remind us that we're having a conversation here, right? And so I think when you're approaching with kind of the solution in mind, you're
Mhm.
missing that space of co-creation and allowing that person who may take up a lot of space to kind of be the person to be like, oh, let's do it this way so that your idea like is their idea. And so I think one of the ways to add to your approach is just to ask some questions using that ORAD technique to really support them in coming to that answer. So, oh, I just learned about community agreements. Has anyone ever heard about this topic before? I wondered in a reflective way, because community agreement is your objective. This is what it is. Like, do we know what it is? In your reflection, like, has anyone used these before? Have they found them to be supportive in this space? Then in your interpretive, how might a community agreement really support us in how we meet and how we include all voices into our space? And then ending with that, do we think we should use, community agreements in our meetings moving forward? And that way you've brought the concept to mind and you've also led them in kind of the direction that you think makes the most sense. And they have co-created what that looks like. So you are all in agreement and you're all kind of working towards that together. And you're feeling much more confident about your approach and what you did. How do you feel about that?
Okay, that's really good. And I think that when I listen to your response, I'm like, ooh, so I was thinking that I was doing a one-on-one, that I was not in the group. But I feel like your feedback is more like if I was in the group and I was doing the community agreement. So I will take from that that yes, try and be, give facts, let the other person ask questions so we can come up with a good plan together. Um, and so that was helpful because we also you also talked about checking in, like why are we having this meeting? So I think I missed that part. Like, so thank you. That's helpful.
I think that approach can work individually or in a group setting. I think if you're doing it if you're doing it just on one-on-one with that person, I think the approach of using the ORAD method will reduce some of your anxiety around having the conversation because you're not accusatory, not to say that you were before, but like you're basically offering an idea that someone else is coming to the same conclusion with you on. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it makes it so that you don't have to feel like this is on you to like put forward. Let's co-create how we should move forward in this space. Greg, I
Yeah.
see your hands up.
Yeah, so my takeaway, and I understood where you were coming from, Yolaine, about sort of creating that team dynamic. I was also in the same headspace as Melissa, where, I've already received this feedback from a team, and we need to now sort of have this conversation one-on-one, because my only fear doing it in a group setting would be to alienate the person who is so gregarious and boisterous. Because if everyone already is quieter, and now I'm asking for the team to give feedback about how to be less like, or how we can be more, have all of our voices heard, I would hate to just have that person be like, well, clearly I'm the one who's talks too much. And so, sort of in a one-on-one situation, I was thinking, because I loved how you were using the Orwood method to kind of get away from like jumping from the objective to the decisional, because I think that's how we do it so oftentimes in our like minds. We're like, all right, we've identified the issue, now let's fix it, So I think the other thing too is like to ask the person maybe if it is a one-on-one conversation, like, do you see yourself taking up some more of the conversation than others? Like, do you notice these behaviors? Like, just to get even their understanding of like if this is something that they're self-aware of too. Um, and just kind of see what comes of that and just kind of get a maybe an understanding of like why they're participating kind of to Melissa's sharing of like maybe you're going to find out actually the team is telling them no, you're the one we want, voicing everything. But yeah, taking a little bit more time to kind of ask those questions too. So that's just sharing my 2 cents.
No, thank you for adding that. I think what you are hitting at, and thank you, Megan, for going back to this page, is you're hitting on why it's important to add reflection to this conversation, right? You're also hitting on why it's important to offer them space to interpret. Because if their reflection was, yeah, everyone told me I should be the voice in the group, then on the interpretation on like, do you think that that is always the case that you should do that? Or do you feel like maybe the quietest people in the room might not always have the space to offer their points of view? They may then come to the decision of themselves about how to proceed forth. So I think you and Melissa are doing a great job of supporting each other in this particular space. Thank you for that feedback, and thank you for spending time crafting these really important planning tools to be able to have these discussions.
Thank you, Elaine.
Not a problem. I see some people chose scenario number 5, which is addressing client complaints or dissatisfaction with program choices. Does anyone want to share kind of how they approached it? Kiana, sorry. Kania, I'm sorry. I have a student named Kiana. I have a friend named Kiona. Kina, I apologize. You chose scenario 1, and the questions that Kenia ch used are, can you tell me what's been going on that might be affecting your ability to meet deadlines? Great. Um, was there anything about this process that felt unclear or overwhelming? Are there any obstacles, personal or technical or otherwise, that are getting in the way? How can I or the program better support you at this time? What would help you feel more confident about completing the next step? Is there anything you need that you haven't felt comfortable asking for before? I think those are great questions. I think they're very much great leading questions. I think while we are all adults, when we have hierarchies, sometimes people feel challenged speaking their truth or being open and honest and transparent about where they're finding their own personal challenges with some of the requirements and expectations of the work. Um, I think these are really great questions. Um, I think for your reflective and your interpretive, you don't want to lead. You want them to kind of give you their interpretation and their reflection. So, if it's, sorry, let me just check which one scenario 1 is on the top of my head. Oh, missed deadlines and accountability. You want to talk about like, how does it make you feel when something important to you is missed or is has not been given the same amount of care that you expected, right? That allows them to think about it from your perspective and build empathy for you in that particular case as well, right? You're saying, I really needed this at this time, and what is going on, which is your objective. But in that reflection, it's like, how does it feel to when something like that has occurred to you? And in the interpretive, like, how might you try to communicate to others, what may be going on so that like they know what's going on? I think those are really strong questions. Anyone else? All right. I'm not gonna call for too much participation, but I actually feel like these are really strong. ORID is like a great way to pull people in and again to co-create a decision. It gives everyone um, it gives everyone ownership of the decision, and it allows everyone to come to that decision respected, supported, and feeling as though they are the professional in that space. Be it your client who is a professional of their own lives, right? They're the professional of their own story. And so we have to make sure that they feel it that way, be it your colleagues who have their own expertise and their own way of doing things, and leadership. These are often great ways that you can lead up. You yourself need certain communication styles, certain ways of working together with others, and it's okay to ask for that. But you're thinking about how do you do so in the way that is supportive and builds community and builds positive interaction. Um, I am going to put to allow Megan to continue on with our presentation, but thank you so much for participating in these. And again, you have the slides, you have, sorry, you have these, well, you do have the slides, you also have the workbook. Make sure that you carry it with you. And if there are other conversations that you need to engage in, feel free to use the scenarios to help put you in that space, or use the remainder pages to practice and craft your next difficult conversation.
Thanks, Yolene. And I am so impressed with just this tiny glimpse that folks have gotten into the ORID method, that you were able to start designing questions right away. Like I said, and these are things you can search. You could even use ChatGPT, help me write an ORID method focused conversation around the following topic, right? So really starting to get to know and what these questions are and what questions elicit the type of interaction and participation that lead to just a stronger fabric, whether it's a one-on-one relationship or a group dynamic. But I think a lot of what today's strategies have really led us to is the importance of the relationship, whether it's with ourselves, and understanding ourselves and being self-reflective, but also how to build these spaces with others. So I'm actually going to close modeling the ORID again. Feel free to follow along. So in the chat, I would love to know, what's a word or phrase that stood out to you today when thinking about navigating difficult conversations? What's a word or phrase that stood out to you? Feel free to unmute or throw it in the chat. Grounded, space, making space, taking space, having intentional space. Thank you, Alexis and Christine. Empathy. Yolene hit on that, really building those multiple perspectives. Emotional intelligence, taking care of yourself. Yes, co-creation. It really builds a team. It builds relationship to know that something's not being done upon me, but rather I'm a part of a conversation, and my viewpoints are valid. Community, practice active listening, be bold. I love that. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it is about asking the question that's not being asked. And I know that practicing the ORID method over the years has really helped me be a little bit more bold in spaces where I normally would just be like, what's going on here? I'm trying to take the temperature in the room. But the ORID really helps, get to that. So thank you for sharing. What's interesting about this topic for you? What's interesting or challenging in thinking about navigating difficult conversations for you? We started the day thinking about how we feel going in, but what's interesting to you about actually maybe using the ORID method? Taking control of the conversation, right? oftentimes we know something difficult is brewing and we go in unprepared, right? So the more we practice, planning or having an intentional conversation could really help. Making tough conversations less tough. Absolutely. It's almost like if you know you're a conflict averse person and then you put yourself in a situation where you're exposed to some tension and conflict, to kind of get yourself out of that funk of fear, flight, right? My own mental health and the impacts it will have with a plan being the conversation. Absolutely. There's something very um, calming about being planful and being intentional. We know you cannot always plan out a conversation, but just as Yolaine took us through that grounding, you can know your body and know yourself and say, you know what, I'm not really in the position to have this conversation right now. Would you mind if we reschedule for X date in the future, right? Understanding yourself, that could give you time to be more intentional and kind of show up fully ready to have the conversation. Yeah, keeping in mind the other thoughts and feelings, not just focusing on mine. It's so difficult, right? You're thinking about what you're going to say, and it's hard to actively listen. I always say, I don't know if you're a doodler or a note taker, but in a meeting, if you are someone who tends to take space and ask a lot of questions, write those things down. Don't tamper those down for yourself, but have an outlet that maybe isn't the group quite yet, right? You can save it for those appropriate moments. Okay, one more for you. At what point did you find yourself thinking in a new way today? Was there a new idea or a new perspective that you're walking away with? Maybe you came in thinking this about difficult conversations and you're leaving with another thought in mind. I see a lot of that in some of these above as well. Listening. Okay. Taking a new viewpoint on listening. Thanks for sharing. And our final question is, do you have questions? Are there any lingering thoughts that Yolaine and I could help you with? We have given you a plethora of resources on the final page of your fillable workbook, the books that we use to kind of dive into this. I can't say enough about, some other methods like Crucial Conversations, and the State Your Path model is another really strong skill to build on that we didn't get to touch on. Standing in the fire is a great, if you do find yourself in facilitating positions, it's a great way to really face those hot seat moments by reflecting, tons of reflective questions in there. Great questions. Well, good. People are thinking in a new way about shared accountability, using breath techniques. Oh, I see some self-awareness here. Need to fix my chronic interjecting, right? So knowing that about yourself, and what's your new outlet for that? Is it jotting down a note? Is it like, some kind of physical tick that you do to yourself? Nope, I'm not going to speak right now, but I'm going to put my finger up and put it down, something for yourself so that you're responding, but you don't have to be that voice. Very good. Here's a question. How can you change a conversation to an orid conversation? Like if someone comes to you in a very hostile way, how can you switch it around? That's a great question, Alexis. I'm going to open the floor, but I'll just start by priming to say, really asking, can we just take a pause here? Let's go back, right? If we go back to this, the way that our brain works, tell me more about what you experienced. Like, tell me what you saw or heard. I want to hear about that, right? So bringing them back to their experience and their senses. You may learn something that you didn't know, right? And again, it's helping someone, back up a few steps before going right to, because decisional is also, that could be an anger space, right? So kind of going back a few steps, like, hey, can we take it back a few? I just want to learn more about what you saw, what you heard, and then what does that remind you of, what's coming up for you, right? Really bringing it back. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for those that are leaving. Elaine, other thoughts of how you can kind of be in the moment and um, invoke Orid in the moment?
So I will admit, I was introduced to Orid, I call it the before times prior to the pandemic. And so I will say the way to get better with Orid is to practice. And so we've had several years of being in this headspace, of using it in different modalities, of working with organizations and individuals to kind of hone in on when we can kind of stop, reflect, and kind of use Orid as our tool. I think it's going to be the same thing for you. You have some examples in the packet. You have some reflection in the packet. You can Google Orid. It comes up everywhere. It ends up being a great tool, but it's really about like doing it more frequently makes the framework a little bit easier to use. And so I would just say practice. It's really helpful. It works so well with so many people. Again, it's about that co-creation of that space, that shared accountability, that like it's not all on you, but I do need your input in this space. And I think it's just through more practice, you'll be great at it and you'll find yourselves using it all the time. I think Megan has used it to plan vacations before. Like, where do we want to go? How do we want that vacation to feel? You can kind of play around with it and really use it to kind of come to some shared understanding and some really strong goals.
Oh, it works with teenagers too.
I do just want to share, I know some people are starting to leave this space. Thank you for joining us. Our QR codes to our LinkedIn are here on your page. Our email addresses are here if you would like to follow up or reach out to us for any support. Um, what we want you to make sure you take away from this entire presentation is first and foremost, preparation is going to build your confidence. If you know that this is coming, or if you yourself are the leader that has to have these conversations, it's important to take some time prior to that to ground yourself, to make sure that you know how to enter into that space. And if you don't, to make time for community agreements. And then lastly, to kind of have some questions created or kind of in place so that you are working with the full human being and not just the problem solution. Okay? That active listening, it's really going to build that connection when someone feels heard, they feel respected, and they recognize that they are in a safe space. It helps to frame that matter. So you're not talking about all the things that are the issue, right? You have taken that preparation in hand and you have a clear focus and framing for what you're here to discuss and how you want and kind of what we're here for, right? Like if we don't know, Simon Sinek, start with the end in mind. What's your why? If you don't know your why, you're kind of wasting their time, right? And getting them anxious and yourself anxious for no reason. And lastly, it's a solution focused conversation. You've already planned out what we're here for, why we're here, what our goals are, and how you want this to move forward. It saves everyone time, it creates trust, it creates respect, and it leads towards a successful place. So I encourage you to practice these strategies, to try these strategies, low stakes spaces, even with your friendships. Again, you can have a conversation with a teenager about how to plan a vacation. You can use it and practice it. And just like the conversation itself, with practice, you'll feel so much better. And remember, just to breathe. Breathing is one of my strongest tools. Some people I know, they see me breathe and they know I'm in it. But at the same time, it really does kind of calm your body down and really increase that self-awareness.
I love that you're getting a +1 from Trevor about breathing. And I just want to say, Orid is not just for difficult or anxiety producing conversations. You can use ORIDs to celebrate or review the year or, all sorts of, planning and strategic thinking around your work. Again, back on the personal note, I know a facilitator that uses the ORID at friends' birthday parties and designs an ORID to get people thinking about what they know about their friend who's celebrating their big day. So again, it doesn't necessarily always have to have this, heavy feel. We hope it's a tool you can use to really be planful in all your conversations. So thanks everybody for joining. And again, hopefully you all have the fillable PDF and can continue kind of working through the resources that we gave you there. And there is an optional survey. I know we are 1 minute over, so it is in your packet or right here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a
you so
great day,
much.
everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you guys.
thank you.